This is Tales and Whispers, where every story is felt, not just heard.
Today, we're jumping into a story that really gets you thinking about ambition, sacrifice, and the truly terrifying cost of money. It really makes you ask yourself, what lines would you be willing to cross to get what you want?
Now, this isn't the start of some fictional thriller. No, this is the real-life question behind one of the most bizarre and frankly shocking criminal cases to come out of Europe in a long, long time. So let's get into it.
Okay, so our story is about a 22-year-old woman from Ljubljana, Slovenia. Her name was Julia. And for her, the typical path to success, school, a career, it just felt way too slow. She saw a shortcut, a fast track to becoming rich, and that shortcut was insurance fraud.
And we are not talking about a small amount of cash here. She was aiming for a life-altering payday, over 1 million euros. That number, that was the engine driving this whole thing. It's what pushed her to do something truly unthinkable.
This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment bad decision. Not at all. Julia spent a whole year quietly putting the pieces of her scheme together. On the surface, it looked so methodical, so planned out, but underneath, it was just absolutely terrifying.
Her approach was just ice cold and so calculated. First, she didn't just get one policy, she signed contracts with 5 different insurance companies to really maximize the payout. And the key detail? She made sure those policies would pay out big for a permanent disability. The final step? Well, that was to stage an accident so bad that it would trigger every single one of those policies.
The financial side of her plan was actually pretty detailed. She wasn't just thinking about a one-time score. She'd set it up to get a huge lump sum payment right away, and then a monthly check for about 3,000 euros for the rest of her life. She was planning for the long haul.
All right, let's fast forward to early 2019. This is when the plan goes into motion. The official story that was filed with the police was simple enough. Julia was cutting tree branches in her garden with a circular saw, her boyfriend was there with her, and there was a terrible, tragic accident.
But that official story, it was a complete and total fabrication. The truth, which investigators would eventually piece together, was just chilling. This was no accident. The injury was completely intentional, self-inflicted, and it was the core of her million-euro plan. Now, to make absolutely sure the insurance companies would have to classify this as a permanent disability, Julia and her boyfriend made a horrifying call. They left her severed hand behind at the scene when they went to the hospital. They figured that way there was no chance it could be reattached.
And this right here, this is the question that just hangs over this entire story. I mean, it's one thing to come up with a scheme like this, but it's another thing entirely to consciously go through with that level of self-harm. What is going on in your head to make that seem like a good idea?
But you know what they say about the best laid plans? Even the most detailed ones can fall apart. And a lot of the time, it's the tiny details you didn't even think about that bring the whole thing crashing down.
See, Julia really believed her plan was foolproof. She thought about the insurance policies, the injury, the payout. She thought she had it all covered. But she hadn't planned for a few key things that were about to blow her entire story wide open.
So here's how it all came undone. First, the police who responded to the call did a search of the area, and they found the hand. They rushed it to the hospital where, against all odds, surgeons actually managed to successfully reattach it. And then came the final nail in the coffin, a little digital clue that proved this was never an accident to begin with.
And that right there was the first huge failure of their scheme. The whole fraud, the entire million-euro idea, was built on the injury being permanent. But thanks to the fast work of the police and those talented doctors, the very foundation of her claim was literally stitched back together.
And here it is, the one piece of evidence that just sealed their fate. While they were investigating, the police took a look at her boyfriend's internet history. And what did they find? Just a few days before the accident, he'd been searching online for artificial hands. That was the smoking gun. It proved premeditation beyond a shadow of a doubt.
That one internet search, that's all it took. It turned the case from a tragic accident into a criminal conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. The lie was totally exposed, and now it was time to face the consequences.
So after the trial, the verdict came down. Julia, the mastermind of the whole thing, was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Her boyfriend, who was right there with her, got 3 years. Even his father got dragged into it and received a suspended sentence. The million-euro dream, it ended in a jail cell. It's easy to hear a story this extreme and just dismiss it, you know? To think, wow, that's just crazy. But if you really think about it, how often do we see people, maybe in smaller ways, compromise who they are for a shortcut to what they want?
The lessons from this story are just so clear. There's often a hidden price that comes with dishonest money. Greed can literally turn you into your own worst enemy, making you willing to destroy yourself for a prize. In the end, it really is a choice between our own dignity and taking a dishonest shortcut.
And that's really the final takeaway from this whole shocking case. The price Yulia was willing to pay, it wasn't just physical. It was a piece of herself. And once you lose that, there is no amount of money on earth that can ever make you whole again.